The galaxy was full of warriors stronger, bigger, faster, and more advanced than any human. Some had armor like living stone, some could grow new limbs, and some had strength equal to small machines. But among all of them, a single human named Rylan Ward walked into the Union defense arena with nothing more than worn-out boots, tired eyes, and a strange quiet courage. To many alien soldiers, he looked weak. To others, he looked fragile. But no one could ignore the way he carried himself: straight spine, slow breaths, and a calm face that almost looked carved from something harder than bone. Rylan was not new to pain. Pain had followed him his whole life like a shadow. But he had learned to live with it the same way other people live with sunlight. He did not talk about it, he did not show it. And whenever someone asked if he was okay, he had only one answer, spoken in a small, steady voice: fine. Most aliens thought humans were emotional creatures. Loud, sensitive, fragile. They had soft skin, hollow bones, and short lives. But then they saw Rylan, this quiet, slightly damaged human standing alone on the training platform, hands wrapped with cloth, eyes looking far away as if he was remembering the place. The galaxy had forgotten. This was his first day joining the arena's mixed species training group. Warriors from 10 different worlds gathered there every cycle to test their skills. Rylan stood among towering reptilians, armored insectoids, and heavy-bodied brutes who could crush a stone with one hand. Next to them, he looked small, almost breakable, but he never flinched. The instructor, a broad-shouldered alien with blue skin and golden tattoos, walked in front of the group and studied each fighter. When he reached Rylan, he paused. "You are human," he said. "Your race is not known for fighting in this arena. Why are you here?" Rylan looked up slowly. His eyes were deep, a little tired, but steady like an old soldier who had seen too much. "I'm here because I don't stop," he said simply. That answer made several aliens laugh. A few shook their heads. One whispered loudly, "He will not last one training day." But Rylan didn't react. He didn't defend himself. He didn't glare back. He just breathed in, breathed out, and waited for the instructor to move on. The first exercise began: a strength test. Warriors had to punch a heavy block until it tilted. Aliens lined up, slamming fists, claws, and armored limbs into the block. The sound echoed like thunder. One by one, they passed. Then Rylan stepped forward. His fist looked small compared to the thick metal target. He took a breath and struck. The block barely moved. His hand shook from the impact, and a faint red mark appeared on his knuckles. Some alien snickered. He struck again. And again. Each punch was weaker than the one before, but he did not slow down. His breath grew unsteady. His arm trembled. Still he continued. By the 20th punch, his knuckles were bleeding. By the 30th, his hand had swollen. By the 40th, the block finally tilted. A hush fell around the arena. He stepped back, breathing hard, pain flickering in his eyes. But when the instructor asked, "Human, are you injured?" Rylan wiped the blood with his other hand and replied, "Fine." The second test was worse endurance. Warriors had to sprint across a long track with sharp wind pushing against them. Heavy species powered through it with force. Light species glided through with speed. Rylan ran like he was fighting a different battle, one inside himself. Each step looked like it hurt, but he kept going. Sweat rolled down his face. His legs shook. Every few meters he stumbled, but never fell. Other fighters passed him easily, finishing long before he reached the end. But Rylan never stopped. And when he finally reached the last marker, gasping, shoulders falling, the instructor called out again, "Human, report your condition." Rylan straightened himself, even though his lungs burned. But this time, a few soldiers didn't laugh. A few even looked impressed. A few stared at him like they were seeing something impossible, because no matter how weak he looked, no matter how slow he moved, Rylan Ward did not break, and no one could understand why. The next day, the arena was louder than ever. Warriors from all over the galaxy gathered to test themselves in the sparring challenge, a test of strength, speed, and endurance. It was not about winning. It was about survival. Even veterans trembled at the thought of facing a real opponent. Rylan stepped onto the platform quietly, his eyes scanning the crowd. He could feel their doubt, their whispers, and their judgment. The human won't last. He is too fragile. He should not be here. But Rylan did not look at them. He looked at the floor, at the platform, at the place where the fight would happen. He breathed slowly. His opponent was Gorith, a Brukar warrior with 4 muscular arms and scales that shined under the arena lights. Goroth was easily 3 times the size of Rylan, with fists that could crush stone and legs strong enough to break a wall. But Goroth smiled politely, bowing slightly. "Human," he said, his voice rumbling. "I hope you are ready." Raylan nodded. His voice was soft, but his eyes burned. "I am," the match began. Goroth struck first, moving faster than most humans could even see. Raylan dodged, rolled, and countered with a punch that barely grazed Goroth's torso. The audience gasped. One hit like that could have knocked another human unconscious. But Raylan stayed steady, legs trembling slightly, fists ready. Then came the first blow that hit him fully. His shoulder twisted unnaturally. A sharp crack echoed through the arena. Pain shot through his body, and he fell to one knee. Everyone froze. Goroth stopped, alarmed. "Yield." He shouted. "You can't continue." Raylan pressed his hand against the platform, breathing heavily. His ribs hurt. His shoulder screamed. His jaw throbbed. But he lifted his head, looking directly at Goroth. His voice was low but firm. "Fine." Silence fell. A few warriors whispered, shocked. No human could have survived that strike and still stayed standing. Rylan pushed himself up. His shoulder ached with every movement, but he moved again, forcing himself closer to Goroth. Every punch he threw was weaker, slower, but still deliberate. He refused to stop. With each strike he endured, the audience began to see something unusual, not speed, not power, but endurance beyond reason. The second hit landed in his ribs. Another crack. The pain was unbearable. He gasped but remained upright. Another hit, this time his leg buckled slightly. He almost fell, but his hands gripped the platform. Another crack, another shiver, and yet he did not yield. Goroth froze, fear flashing in his eyes. "Human, you are." "Impossible." But Rylan did not hear him. His mind was elsewhere. Memories flickered fire, screams, loss. He remembered the times he had been told he was weak, the times people had abandoned him, the times his body had been broken and healed again. And now, in this moment, he understood something. He was not just fighting Goroth. He was fighting himself, his past, and every doubt ever placed on his species. He threw one last punch, weaker than the rest, barely reaching Goroth's armor. But then he stumbled backward, breathing harshly. Every part of him hurt. 17 cracks already had formed in his body in the past months, broken bones, fractured limbs, bruises that refused to fade. Yet here he was, standing, still able to whisper, "Fine." Goroth lowered his fists. The crowd was silent. Even the instructor, who had seen warriors survive unimaginable pain, could not hide the awe in his eyes. Raylan had survived strikes that should have killed him. He had endured blows that would have shattered every other species. And he had stood upright, whispering the same word he always did. Some warriors stared in disbelief. Others whispered among themselves, asking, "How can a human survive this?" Rylan did not hear them. He barely felt the pain anymore. He only felt one thing, the drive to keep moving. To keep proving that humans were not fragile. That they were more than their bones and muscles. That they could endure what others could not even imagine. When the match ended, Raylan fell to his knees, exhausted, bleeding, and shaking. Goroth knelt beside him, eyes wide. You are something else, human," he said quietly. "I've never seen anyone endure like this." Raylan nodded slightly. His chest rose and fell rapidly, his hands trembling. He smiled faintly, almost sad. Then, as if it were the only answer he had ever known, he whispered again, "Fine." The audience erupted in applause, not for victory, but for courage. Not for strength, but for willpower. Not for winning, but for enduring the impossible. And in that moment, Raylan Ward became more than a human in their eyes. He became a symbol. A reminder that no matter how small, how fragile, or how underestimated, humans could survive anything. And that survival, even in the face of unimaginable pain, could be expressed in one simple word: call on fine. After the sparring match, Rylan walked slowly toward the medbay. Every step reminded him of the pain he had tried to ignore. His shoulder throbbed with a deep ache. His ribs felt like they had been shattered more than once, and his legs trembled as if they could no longer support him. But he did not stop. Humans were fragile, the alien said, but Rylan had never believed it. Not fully. Not in this life. The medics rushed toward him, their scanners already reading warnings. His injuries were severe, 17 breaks across his body, some old, some fresh. Most warriors would have been unconscious, carried on stretchers, or worse. But Raylan walked on his own, blood trickling down his arms, and breathed steadily despite the pain. Captain Syria Lythe, a veteran officer known for her sharp mind and calm demeanor, entered the medbay and stopped short. She had seen warriors from dozens of worlds, some of them nearly invincible, but none like him. "Human, this is impossible," she said softly, shaking her head. Raylan did not look at her. He leaned against the wall, his body quivering slightly, and said in the same quiet voice that had become his shield, "Fine." Syria frowned. 17 breaks. You are barely walking. How are you? Fine. He shrugged, almost tiredly. Pain doesn't kill me. It just tells me I'm alive. Her eyes softened. She studied him closely, the bruises, the cuts, the swelling, the exhaustion, and for a moment, she saw past the human. She saw the determination, the stubborn fire, the unyielding will that refused to bow to the laws of flesh and bone. "Why do you keep pushing yourself?" she asked gently. "You don't have to prove anything." Raylan looked at the floor, voice low. "I don't fight to prove. I fight to survive. And surviving means I keep moving, no matter what hits me." The medics looked at each other in disbelief. He was bleeding, he was shaking, he was hurt in ways they had never treated before, and yet he was upright. And he was calm. One of the younger medics, a nervous insectoid named Kelly, stepped forward. "But, human, you're in so much pain." "Your body," Raylan turned to her, a faint smile touching his lips. "Pain doesn't always mean weakness. Sometimes it just means I'm alive. And alive, I keep going." The room fell silent. Not because of his words, but because of the quiet truth in them. Every species in the galaxy feared limits, pain, injury, death. But here was a human who had not only faced them, but had embraced them. For the first time, Syria realized something she had never known. Humans were not just fragile creatures of flesh. They were resilient beyond understanding. Their bones could break. Their bodies could fail. But their will could survive anything. The medics gently guided him to a bench and started to examine each injury carefully. Raylan endured every touch without complaint, his body trembling with pain, his breath sharp, but never crying out. Every time they asked him if it hurt, every time they offered relief, he answered the same way, "Fine." Hours passed. Raylan sat quietly, letting the medics work while he stared at the ceiling. His mind wandered through memories he had kept locked away, burning buildings, lost friends, failures, and moments when survival seemed impossible. Each memory was a wound of its own, a scar on his soul. But he did not collapse under it. He did not cry. He only whispered once more to himself, "Fine. Fine. Fine." Syria observed him from a distance. She had seen warriors break, scream, and sometimes even die because of pain. But this human, he endured without fear, without complaint, without surrender. There was something almost inhuman about it. And yet, in his eyes she saw truth. By the end of the day, Raylan was bandaged, his injuries stabilized. But the exhaustion was written across his face like a deep map of battles survived. Still, he refused to lie down. He refused to rest fully. He wanted to feel the ache in his bones. He wanted to feel alive. "Why do you do this to yourself?" Syria asked one last time, her voice almost breaking. Raylan looked at her, blood-streaked and bruised, and smiled faintly. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Because if I stop, if I let the pain win, then I'm already broken. And humans, we don't break that easily." Syria stared at him, realizing the truth she had ignored for so long. Pain could bend humans, push them to their limits, and even crush their bodies. But the human spirit, the human will, it could rise again, stronger than any weapon, faster than any alien instinct, and brighter than any star in the galaxy. And Raylan Ward, this small, battered human, was living proof. The arena was louder than ever the next morning. A new challenge had begun, a survival trial designed to push every warrior past the limits of endurance, speed, and strength. This was not a friendly match. This was a test that had broken dozens of species before, some never returning to the platform. And now, Raylan Ward stepped forward, every muscle screaming, every bone aching, ready to face it. He did not speak. He never did. His fists were wrapped tightly, his chest rising slowly with each breath. Other warriors looked at him with disbelief. Some whispered, "That human, he cannot survive this." Others watched quietly, fearing what he might endure. But Rylan only looked at the course in front of him. Obstacles of fire, spinning blades, and walls taller than most aliens were waiting. And he would face all of them. The starting signal rang. Warriors surged forward. Rylan ran. His legs burned, each step feeling heavier than the last. His shoulder throbbed with old fractures, his ribs protested every breath, and yet he ran. Around him, other fighters leaped over obstacles, slid under barriers, and sprinted with strength he could never match. But he kept moving. One foot after the other, one breath after the other, the first wall loomed. A giant, smooth surface impossible for most humans to climb. Rylan paused for a second, surveying it, and then sprinted toward it. He jumped, grabbed the edge with bloodied hands, and pulled himself up. Every muscle screamed in protest. His knuckles split further on the rough surface. Pain sliced through his ribs. But he climbed. Step by step, inch by inch, he made it over. When he reached the ground, he stumbled but kept going. The spinning blades came next. They were designed to cut through metal, to stop anyone daring to pass. Rylan ducked, twisted, and rolled under them, feeling the wind slice past his face. One blade nicked his arm, and another grazed his leg, opening shallow cuts. He did not cry out. He did not slow. He whispered the same word he had repeated for weeks: "Fine." Some alien fighters stopped and stared. This human, small, broken, bleeding, was still alive. And worse, he was still moving. The next challenge was the fire pit. Flames rose high, heat burning, smoke stinging every eye. Rylan inhaled sharply. The heat singed his hair, his skin blistering slightly. Every step on the hot surface felt like walking on knives. One wrong move would mean serious injury, maybe worse. Still, he ran. His legs shook, sweat and ash mixing on his face. He jumped over a low wall, rolled through the smoke, and emerged coughing but standing. By now, the crowd was silent. Not because of fear, but because of awe. The humans were small, the crowd had said. Fragile, they whispered. Weak, they laughed. And yet here was a human moving through impossible obstacles, refusing to stop, refusing to yield, refusing to admit weakness. Halfway through the course, his body began to falter. Rylan's vision blurred slightly. Pain stabbed every joint. His ribs ached with every breath. The old fractures throbbed, warning him to stop. And yet, he refused. His mind went to the promise he had made to himself long ago: never break, never quit, never surrender. A massive alien brute lunged toward him, attempting to block his path. Rylan ducked, twisted, and punched with all the strength left in his arm. His knuckle cracked. Pain shot through his shoulder. But the brute stumbled back, surprised. Rylan didn't hesitate. He ran again, sweat dripping from his face, blood from old wounds mixing with fresh cuts. Finally, the last obstacle came into view, a steep incline leading to the finish line. Every step felt impossible. He wanted to collapse. He wanted to give in. His lungs burned, his legs threatened to fail, and every bone screamed. And yet, he took another step. And another. When he reached the top, he fell to his knees, shaking violently. The crowd erupted, not for victory over others, but for the triumph over himself. Pain, fatigue, and fear had tried to stop him. Every injury, every crack in his body, every doubt in the galaxy whispered, "Give up." But he had not. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena. "Human, how do you feel?" Rylan lifted his head, blood and sweat dripping from his face. His body was broken in ways that could have ended any other life. And yet, he smiled faintly, his eyes burning with fire. He whispered softly, the one word that had carried him through every test: "Fine." The words were not denial this time. Not bravado. Not empty pride. They were truth. Every bone, every bruise, every pain, every memory of failure and survival had led to this moment. And in that simple word, Rylan Ward showed the galaxy what humans were capable of: endurance beyond reason, courage beyond understanding, and a will that refused to be broken. After the grueling survival trial, Rylan was quiet. His body ached in ways even he could not name. Every joint protested, every rib throbbed, and his shoulder burned like fire. Yet, despite the pain, he refused to sit alone. He wandered through the training halls, watching other warriors practice, learning, and sometimes laughing. Some of the younger fighters whispered about him as he passed. "The human who survived 17 breaks. I can't believe he is still standing. How is he not dead yet?" Rylan heard the words, but he did not answer. He had learned long ago that the galaxy spoke many doubts, but the truth lived in actions, not words. One warrior, a small insectoid named Kelly, approached him. Her wings fluttered nervously. "Human, why do you keep pushing yourself so hard? You are hurt. You should rest." Raylan shook his head slowly, a faint smile on his face. "Rest doesn't fix fear. Pain doesn't stop memory. If I stop now, then everything I've survived means nothing." Kelly tilted her head, wings trembling. "But don't you feel afraid? Don't you feel tired?" Raylan looked away, jaw tight. His voice was soft but steady. "I do, I always do. But fear doesn't get to decide. Pain doesn't get to decide. I do." The words hung in the air. Kelly stared at him, a mixture of awe and confusion on her face. No one had ever spoken like that in the arena before. No human, and perhaps no alien either. Meanwhile, other warriors had started to gather. Gorath, the massive Brukar who had fought him earlier, stepped forward, his forearms folded. "Human, you defy everything I know about strength. I underestimated you." Raylan looked at him, shoulders stiff, ribs aching. "Strength isn't always about power," he said. "Sometimes it's about surviving the things that should have killed you." Gorath's eyes softened. "You carry more than pain. You carry courage, and I respect it." Word spread quickly among the fighters. The human who refused to break. The human who said only one word, no matter how much he hurt: "Fine," but not all attention was kind. Some veterans shook their heads, muttering that Raylan was reckless. "He's small. He's fragile. He will break eventually." They did not understand that humans were not just about size or muscle. They were about will, about persistence, about refusing to surrender when every law of nature said to give up. As the day went on, Raylan found himself near a quiet corner of the training grounds. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the floor. He sank onto the ground, trying to stretch his legs, his body screaming at him to stop. Yet he did not close his eyes. Memories he had tried to bury came back, the times he had been abandoned. The times he had watched friends fall, the times he had failed. For a moment, he wondered if he was truly strong, or if he was just too stubborn to give in. He felt a tear slip down his cheek, unremarkable and quiet. He did not cry out. He did not apologize. He only whispered to himself, as he always did, "Fine." That word had carried him through 17 breaks, countless battles, and moments when his body screamed to quit. And now, even when his soul ached, it carried him forward. Kelly approached quietly again, placing a small nutrient pack beside him. "Here," she said softly. "You need it." Raylan took it without speaking. His hands trembled slightly as he unwrapped it. She waited patiently, wings still, eyes gentle. "You don't have to be alone, human," she said. We see you, and we believe in you." Raylan looked at her, and for the first time in days, he felt a small warmth inside him. Not pride, not victory, not strength, but connection. Even in a galaxy that doubted humans, even in a place where everyone expected him to break, someone saw him. Someone believed in his endurance. He gave a faint smile. "Fine," he said again. But this time, the word felt different. Not just survival, not just stubbornness, but hope. And in that quiet moment, Raylan understood something important. Strength was not only about enduring pain. It was about letting others stand beside you. It was about refusing to give in, not for pride, but for something bigger than yourself. Even broken, even bleeding, even exhausted, Raylan Ward still stood. Still moved. Still whispered the word that had become a legend across the arena. Colon fine. Because humans small, fragile, underestimated, had a strength no machine, no armor, and no alien power could match, and the galaxy was only beginning to understand it. The day of the final trial arrived, and the arena felt different. It was no longer just a place of training or testing. Today, it was a battlefield of endurance, of courage, of survival itself. Warriors from every world had gathered, some cheering, some silently judging. All watching the small human who had already survived the impossible. Raylan stood at the starting line. His body battered, ribs still aching from old breaks, muscles trembling with exhaustion. His fists were wrapped, but blood had seeped through the cloth from countless cuts and bruises. Every step he took carried the weight of pain, but he did not hesitate. His eyes were calm, steady, focused. The instructor's voice rang out across the arena. Final trial. Only one path. One chance. Every obstacle, every opponent. Survive or fail. Rylan nodded, taking a deep breath. He didn't look at the towering alien warriors beside him, some twice his size, some with limbs that seemed impossible to stop. He only looked at the path ahead and at the challenge waiting for him. The signal sounded. Chaos erupted. Alien fighters charged forward, obstacles flaring with fire and blades. Rylan ran, each step a battle. Every muscle screamed, every joint threatened to give way, but he pushed forward. He stumbled over a jagged stone, scraping his arm, but he did not stop. He fell over once more on the second hurdle, chest burning, ribs stabbing with pain, but he rose again. As he reached the central arena, a massive opponent stepped forward, a creature larger than any Rylan had faced before. Its 4 arms could crush steel, its tail could knock down walls. The crowd gasped. Many whispered that the human would not survive this encounter. Rylan faced it without fear. His own fear did not vanish, but he did not let it rule him. He moved with careful precision, dodging the first strikes, feeling every bone protest with pain. A heavy punch slammed into his shoulder, and he nearly fell. Pain shot through his ribs like lightning. He gritted his teeth, whispered under his breath, "Fine." The creature lunged again, faster this time. Rylan ducked, rolled, and landed a punch to its side. His knuckles cracked. Another blow hit his leg, sending shockwaves up his spine. The pain was overwhelming, but he forced himself to breathe steadily. Step by step, punch by punch, he fought not just the creature, but every doubt, every limit, every weakness he had ever known. Midway through, he stumbled. His vision blurred. Memory flashed before him, faces he had lost, battles he had failed, pain he thought he could never endure again. He sank to one knee, trembling, every fracture screaming. The crowd gasped. Everyone thought this was the end. But Rylan did not stop. Not yet. He clenched his fists, felt the fire of determination ignite inside him. The words he had repeated through 17 breaks, through countless trials, echoed in his mind. Fine, fine. With a roar he did not know he could produce, he rose. He lunged at the opponent, moving with all the strength left in his body. Each strike counted. Each dodge saved him from catastrophe. Pain was a constant companion, but it was no longer an enemy. It was a reminder that he was alive, that he had survived this long, and that he would survive one more moment. One more strike, one more step. Finally, with a final burst of effort, Rylan disarmed the creature, forcing it to retreat. He collapsed to the ground, chest heaving, blood and sweat dripping from his face, body trembling violently. Every bone ached. Every muscle burned. And yet, he lifted his head. The crowd fell silent, then erupted into thunderous applause. Some cheering, some crying, some simply staring in awe. A voice boomed over the arena. Human fighter. Rylan Ward. Report your condition. Rylan's lips parted. And in a small, tired, but unwavering voice, he said the word that had carried him through everything. Fine. The word echoed through the arena, carrying more than endurance or stubbornness. It carried hope, courage, the unyielding truth of human willpower. Every alien watching understood, in that single word, that humans were not weak. They were not fragile. They were capable of surviving the impossible, of rising again when every law of nature said they should fall. Captain Syria Lythe stepped forward, eyes wide with admiration. She had seen warriors from dozens of worlds, but none like this human. You endured everything," she whispered. "You faced the impossible and survived. How?" Rylan lifted his bloodied face, faintly smiling. "Because I don't stop. I can break, but I won't surrender. And humans, we endure." The arena erupted again. Not in disbelief, but in respect. Every warrior, every spectator, understood something vital that day. Strength was not always about power, speed, armor. It was about will, courage, the fire that refused to die. And in the center of the arena, battered, bleeding, and exhausted beyond imagining, Rylan Ward, the human who had survived 17 breaks, countless injuries, and impossible odds, stood tall in the eyes of the galaxy. Fine. A single word, but one that carried the weight of an entire species' determination.